How's it going, everybody? It is Tuesday, 5:25 p.m., and we are headed home. We tried this last night. We tried this again this morning. Lighting was a bit of a chore because it's getting darker in Tennessee earlier, so we were fortunate today that I got off work a little earlier. But it's time for this week's edition of Riding in Cars with Cards. This is the show by me. My name is Adam. As part of my companion series to the podcast that I do over on constructivecriticism.com, the Homeward Path podcast. It covers more evergreen topics, so this is an attempt to kind of apply those lessons in real time. And this week, we got a doozy. We got an announcement from Wizards. It's a two-parter. We got a ban list announcement, and then we got the part of the announcement that I'm actually really, really excited about. So, for those who don't know, we're going to kind of skim over the ban list announcement part. Field of the Dead, banned in Standard. I don't disagree with the decision to ban that card specifically. I just hate that we keep having to ban cards in Standard because we forget to put interaction in the format for these cards. Full stop. That is my entire reason for being unhappy with a ban. It's not that I'm unhappy with the ban on Field of the Dead. I honestly am not getting hurt by it personally at all. I actually forgot to order mine when I was in the process of getting my stuff for Eldraine Standard. And right now it's looking like I was really fortunate to do so. But be that as it may, it's still not a great look for the game as a whole, especially consumer confidence. The more we ban cards in Standard, the more we take the smallest constructed format and tell people, look, you're already not going to get to play with these cards for a super long time. You get 2 years out of them maximum if you buy them in October when they come out. And also, you can't use these. Now, admittedly, there's definitely some hiccups between Magic and something like Hearthstone where they can just go in because it's digital only and just nerf it, just make it different, make it worse if it's a problem, or eventually just move it into the Hall of Fame. Nobody really gets hurt from a consumer confidence standpoint because you get all those materials back. You can craft new ones. But the fact of the matter is it's another banning in Standard in a 2-year stretch in which we've had a grand total of a month with no cards on the Standard ban list. The Rampaging Ferocidon came off at the end of October, or maybe 2 months. It came off at the end of August, and then near the end of October, it's gone again. We got a card on there again. That is my entire beef with the banning, if you want to call it that. Arkham's Astrolabe is also banned in Pauper, and I applaud Wizards on that one. It was a card that was so ubiquitous, it shaped deck building so much. Literally every deck was playing it if they wanted to. There was no reason to not play it other than you couldn't get a hold of Snow Basics. And it was less about something like that. It was less about, card availability or anything like that. And much, 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 much more about the fact that it enabled nearly flawless mana in 3 colors in a format that doesn't have untapped dual lands. Because thanks to some shenanigans involving cards like Glinthawk and Core Skyfisher being able to pick it up and recast it, you would draw another card and then it would allow you to fix mana again through it. It was also another snow permanent, so it counted toward making Skred stronger. It got to a point where the Jeskai Ephemerate deck was literally just playing all the best cards. Because there was no reason not to. Why would you play anything else? Core Skyfisher and Glinthawk are already among the best cards in the format. Skred is one of the premier removal spells in the format. And now you get to tack on the ability to play, easy access to cards like Prohibit or, just counter magic in general. Some of the decks were going, bleeding into additional colors Tron really came on as a strong force due to having an extra colored mana source in their deck to go along with the handful of basics that they play. Like, top to bottom, it was one of the most utilized cards in Pauper, and it had warped deck building in such a way that it was just not conceivable to keep it in the format anymore. So I don't disagree with either of the ban decisions. Again, for the standard one, I'm just unhappy that we keep having to do this. And for the Pauper one, I have no complaints whatsoever. I have honestly not played a ton of Pauper in the last 6 months. It's not out of anything except we can't seem to get it to fire, or I can't seem to get free on the days that we do them. So the unexciting part of the announcement out of the way, let's get to the part we should all be unbelievably excited for. We have a new Eternal format. As of right now, it is from Return to Ravnica forward, base sets only, obviously. So we're not including stuff like Dual Decks, we're not including stuff like the Commander series, we're not including the, Ultimate Master, or the Master sets, or the Horizons, or, any of that, obviously. It's just base sets from Return to Ravnica forward. And at first glance, you see Return to Ravnica forward, and you think, oh gosh, not another fetch shock format. Oh, but wait. They preemptively banned the fetch lands. I'm going to cheat death a little bit here, but thank you. There are very few things about this format that make me happier than not having fetch lands in it. Not having fetch lands in this format actively lets it seek out its own identity. Because all of the other Eternal formats are defined by the mana base restrictions, or lack thereof. Vintage. A massive part of Vintage is access to fast artifact mana. Because no other format has that. And not even necessarily fast artifact mana, but even just unbelievably fast mana in the form of cards like Mishra's Workshop, the Moxen, Black Lotus, Grim Monolith, Mana Vault, Mana Crypt. All these cards just allow you to jump way ahead on mana. Tolarian Academy. Way ahead on mana. Like, unreasonably ahead on mana. Legacy is defined by the fact that fetch lands are basically painless. So you can utilize them as more than just mana fixing. You can also use them specifically to shuffle your library. It's what got Sensei's Divining Top banned in Legacy. It's what makes Brainstorm the most powerful cantrip in Legacy. Is the combination of Brainstorm and Ponder and fetch lands, along with the original dual lands, so that they're mana fixing. They allow you access to perfect mana, and there's not much of a drawback to it unless you count shelling out like my entire probably 2 months worth of income for one deck. That's a pretty steep drawback for me. But then we move from Legacy into Modern. And Modern has been defined by fetch shock mana bases in two different ways. One, obviously that allows perfect mana, but it comes at a cost. And that cost is to your life total. The shock lands ask a price from you in order to give you perfect mana. Fetch into shock, like Modern has been a format for a long time where you virtually treat your starting life total as 14. And that has warped how the format has functioned since its inception. Even when it was old extended, they did the same thing there. You functionally started the game at 14. Well, it was the same way there. The format has to be fast because life totals are treated as though they don't matter. Until they do, and you're playing burn, and then your opponent has to play differently. They play slower in order to mitigate life loss. But in a game between, for example, humans and a control deck, a really fast humans draw forces a control player to take damage early in the game to survive. It forces, like the deck building constraints forced on the format in Modern by way of fetch shock mana bases make it to where we have to have faster, tighter, more efficient game plans. Like the format very quickly went from the turn 4 format it was at launch, with some obvious outliers in the form of 12 post and mono blue infect. It went from that format to what it is today, which is like a turn 2.5 format. Like if you're playing Storm, Storm, Burn, Infect, Boggles, the fast, unreasonably proactive linear decks, Affinity, Hardened Scales, your entire goal in the game is to have your opponent dead or dying by the end of turn 3. You want to have some sort of seemingly insurmountable advantage by the end of your third turn. And that's not going to be the case in Pioneer. Not having fetch lands already just lets this format explore a new identity. And it's an identity that it shares with I would argue, two of the best standard formats of all time. That being RTR Innistrad Standard, which featured shock check land mana bases and access to painless, easy, relatively painless 3-color mana bases, and sort of an emphasis on the mid-game. And then you had the standard format we just finished prior to rotation, which was Guilds of Ravnica plus Ixalan Dominaria and Core 2019, Ravnica Allegiance and War of the Spark. That standard format featured shockland, checkland mana bases, and an emphasis on mana efficiency, an emphasis on kind of rock, paper, scissors like approaches to the top of the metagame. It was one of the more dynamic standard formats I've ever played. And we get to retain kind of the mana base identity of those two formats, along with a deep well of different mechanics and things to pull us in a lot of different directions. I am 1,000% on board with this. Like, we have all the multicolor matter stuff from the Ravnica blocks and the Khans of Tarkir block. We have the little bits and pieces of linear tribal that are sprinkled throughout all of it. Even something as innocuous as humans or spirits or, just flyers, like flying creatures matter because you have access to cards like Supreme Phantom, but even more now, cards like Favorable Winds, Empyrean Eagle. Like, these are all cards you can play in your deck and not feel bad about it. Like, that sounds great. You have additional cheap 1-drops for the Flyers deck. You have, there's a lot of different directions you can be pulled in just based on what cards are legal. You've got super parasitic mechanics like Devotion, Energy, trying to think what else there is. The graveyard-oriented mechanics, cards that create kind of a build-around scenario in Arclight Phoenix, Prized Amalgam, Narcomoeba, Creeping Chill. There's something there. I know there is. What else is there? The heroic mechanic, like that's a deck that wasn't remotely playable in Modern, but you can play a souped up version of the red-white deck from Standard, featuring additional 1-drops that play unbelievably well with the mechanic. Sign me up. It's awesome. You've got Build Around Me. You've got obviously busted things going on. Aetherworks Marvel and Eldrazi Titans from Battle for Zendikar and Oath of the Gatewatch. And Eldritch Moon, because Emrakul. You've got Saheeli Rai and Felidar Guardian. You have Dig Through Time and Treasure Cruise, currently at 4. I don't think that one's going to last. I wouldn't get super attached. I'm going to play them until they tell me I can't. But I wouldn't get emotionally invested in getting to keep those cards. But it's sweet. It's awesome. I love it. I love having access to all this stuff again and it be relevant. Also, I know there's a whole legion of people who are jumping up and down, chomping at the bit to get to cast Siege Rhino again and not get laughed off the table. I mean, Brett, I know you're one of them. Siege Rhino is fun. Siege Rhino is a good Magic card. Thoughtseize is going to be in this format because it's in Theros. So it creates a little bit of a buffer. Saheeli Felidar Guardian was busted in half in Standard because we didn't have a lot of action of reaction to it. We've had several years of cards printed since then. Rampaging Ferocidon is legal in this format. It single-handedly says, no, Saheeli, you're going to die. Aetherworks Marvel was busted in half in its Standard format because there weren't a lot of ways to interact with it. The counter spells were bad. Well, we've not only got playable counterspells across the board, we got reasonable options in blue decks between Absorb, Sinister Sabotage, Dovin's Veto, good old Negate, Essence Scatter, Essence Capture. Lots and lots of ways to interact with spells on the stack. Mystical Disputes playable. You have cards like Oko that can just turn the advantage you gain from having an Eldrazi Titan into exactly what you get when you cast it and nothing else. Oko can just turn Emrakul, a creature who, created legions of completely insane followers and warped the plane around her on Innistrad, into a 3/3 elk. Cool. Nice 4 mana, 6 energy elk. Good job. That's legal in the format. And someone please correct me if I'm wrong, but based on the way it interacts with Finale of Promise, I would assume it would be the same thing with Aetherworks Marvel, but Teferi Time Raveler, I believe, puts a stop to Aetherworks Marvel. Because the ability tries to put the spell directly onto the stack. It tries to cast the spell. During resolution, the ability resolves casting the spell, and Teferi requires the stack to be empty for you to cast spells. Because you have to play at sorcery speed. Which I believe would make it to where the ability cannot put a spell on the stack. I may be wrong about that. But it works that way against Finale of Promise, so I would assume it works that way against Aetherworks Marvel as well. Again, please, somebody consult a judge. Let me know. Get back to me. I want to know. I want to know if I'm right or wrong there. And then last but not least, we've just aggro. It's an old format. It's an eternal format where honest to gosh aggro decks are not only playable, but might be some of the best day one choices. Because we don't have pressure to go into a deck like Burn. Hazoret the Fervent might just be a really, really good aggro curve topper. When's the last time we said that? Oh, right, when it was in Standard, a year or 2 years ago. But, we had, Black-Red Chain Whirler can potentially be a deck. Now, maybe it's even better if you can make the splash work and just play Jund so that you can play Status and Statue. So that you can Chain Whirler with Death Touch and just kill all their stuff. Except their Planeswalkers, because Death Touch is weird. But, interplanar beings and all. there's a lot available in this format to dive into. I would offer one very important word of caution, though. Do not get so caught up in trying to do the coolest thing you can to ignore the best thing you can be doing. There's a couple of decks I want to try that are going to be really cool. But I'm also building a couple that I feel like are going to be well positioned, that are just going to be good. They're going to be fast, powerful, proactive, and do a thing that if my opponent doesn't have the right answer, we just roll them over. Those will be covered in later videos once my cards come in and I get a chance to play and test and tune. But for now, you're just going to be left with the vagary. One of them is an aggro deck. Two of them are mid-range decks, but are decidedly a little bit different in implementation. And the last one is, well, I'll give you a nugget on the last one. The last one is mono blue tempo. Because, I mean, if everybody's going to be trying really cool, expensive stuff, the deck full of counterspells seems pretty reasonable. And it's not like it gets worse picking up cards from older sets. The one thing, the other pillar of the format that I would urge you to keep in mind when you're designing your aggro, your tokens, like whatever it is you're playing, Supreme Verdict is in this format. Please keep that in mind. Please do not let yourself get completely blown out by Supreme Verdict because you just forgot it exists. So, I am unreasonably excited for Pioneer. Like, Nick is already sending me lists. Brett and I are already walking through some plans, some strategies, some things to look at. He's got, thankfully, we never did get around to taking all his bulk cards up to McKay's because most of his bulk cards are from RTR forward. Because that was the last standard format he played in. So, we had a lot of stuff to go through and find out what we got, what we need, all that good nonsense. And that gives us a really good chance to start off on the right foot. And then the last deck I want to point out as an honorable mention, because I just have all the cards today, I'm going to probably build it after I get home, is it Phoenix? You can play Arclight Phoenix and Thing in the Ice in this format together. It's slower than the modern version. Absolutely it's slower than the modern version. Is it completely respectable? I think it is. I think that deck is fine. We still have Finale of Promise. We have the 2-mana cantrips that we had when the deck was in Standard and Tormenting Voice and Chart a Course. We have Finale of Promise. I can't say that card's busted in half when you can use it. And we also get to add Bad Faithless Looting, better known as Is It Charm, from RTR. So we get to add another draw discard effect that also happens to double as a Spell Pierce or a Shock if we need it. We get to add Magma Spray and Pillar of Flame if we need to clear out creatures. Like, there's a ton available to a lot of different decks. And it's going to be really interesting to see how things shake out in the first few weeks of leagues and results. But I think, anyone who says this is going to be another flash in the pan format like Frontier, you underestimate how much people like me like to save money. If I don't have to spend $800 to buy a bad modern deck, and I can instead spend $2 or $3 to build a good Pioneer deck because I take my standard cards and get some older stuff, I'm going to do that. Saving money's great, and getting to do it while getting to play what looks to be an interesting, dynamic, unique format makes it even better. It makes it a really good investment. And that's my biggest point in all of this. Today, like right now, is one of the best times to get in on some sleeper cards. I can't tell you what they are. I don't do MTG finance. I'm not in that world. But if you can think of something that looks criminally underrated, right now is the best time to get it. Because if this format really starts to take off and things get discovered, that's when we're going to get hit with the backside of the FOMO, the fear of missing out. We're going to miss out. I already missed out on a few cards that I really wanted to look at because I had to wait a few hours to get home. So it's really exciting. The formats, I can sit here and gush about it all day. Like, on paper, it looks to be one of the most fun formats we've been allowed to play in a long time. So that's all I've got for this week, everybody. Thanks for watching, listening, however you consume. If you got anything to say about it, questions, comments, concerns, you want to tell me what I did right, want to tell me what I did wrong, leave them down below. Leave them on Facebook. My name is Adam Spain. If you're in the Facebook group, the Homeward Pathfinders, leave them there. If you're on Twitter, I'm at Homeward Path MTG. If you are a patron of the show, leave them in the Discord. It's one of your perks. We may as well use it. If you want to become a patron of the show and get a chance to get your decks published on this show, get to the front of the line, if you will, on decks to be published on this show, patreon.com/HomewardPathMTG. If you're a patron of $3 or more, you go to the front of the line. So I want awesome Frontier deck, or not Frontier. I'm going to do this a bunch. I'm going to keep calling it Frontier, but it's Pioneer. I want awesome Pioneer decks to talk about because this format has me unreasonably excited. So I want to talk about it more. I want to play it. I want to get my hands on it. I want to do my best to try to break this thing in the early going, but at the same time, figure out what some good longer-term investment strategies are. Decks that are like Burn or like Infect or like Tron or like Blue-White Control. Decks that don't seem super busted on the surface, but that just keep coming back, keep showing up, and retain their value in being playable regardless of what everybody else is doing. So with that, I'm going to leave you. We'll catch you Thursday for Homeward Path, where I'm going to talk about building a deck in a brand new format because it's something I feel uniquely qualified to talk about. We'll go over why and all of that during the episode. But with that, I'm going to leave you. Take it easy. We'll catch you Thursday.